Terrific. I have to hit a button. Okay. So hi guys and welcome. And once again, I'm Mary Beth Temple. And we are going to take a look at the Knit Basic Summer Tee. Now, a lot of people, summer top. Can you tell? I'm not quite with it yet today, but I'll get there. So a lot of people are avid knitters or they're avid crocheters, and they're concerned about working on their first garment. This is a really terrific one to start with because it's very, very simple. It's two pieces. There's the front and the back. The arm side or the armhole shaping happens while you're knitting that front and the back. The only difference really is the neckband, and it comes in a wide variety of sizes. It comes in 6 sizes. The other thing that, again, sometimes put people off about color work is they're worried about ends, or they're worried about having to juggle multiple balls of yarn. But because the Caron Cotton Cakes, that's a tongue twister, because it shades the way it does, you get these really interesting color variations, but all you're doing is changing yarn every other row. That's all you're doing. And the yarn is doing the work for you. So you get these really interesting variations depending on which sections of which balls of yarn hook up with each other, which are connected to each other. So I'm going to go to the tabletop camera and we're going to talk about sizing. Let me fix my light. There we go. So the first thing I want to talk about is, how do you pick the size that you want to knit? And a lot of people that have what I call garment fails, they try and knit their first garment, it doesn't suit them or it doesn't fit them, and they're sad. And then they go the next several years of their knitting career saying, oh, I just can't knit garments. You can, you just need to pick the right size. So with sewing, with knitting, with crochet, with most of the fiber arts, just because you can walk into Belk's or Macy's and buy a size medium top, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to knit the size medium sweater. You need to know how that pattern is measured out in relationship to your personal body measurements. Now, there are 2 ways that I recommend doing this. One is get a buddy, get a good tape measure, not one from the dollar store, like a nice soft tape measure. Take some measurements, what your cross shoulder is, what your most comfortable arm opening is, what your bust is, and your waist, and maybe your hip if it's a longer sweater, and write those down. It doesn't matter what you think it should be. To get a successful fitted garment, you need to know what those numbers are. And there's no judgment. It doesn't matter. You just need to know what the numbers are so you can do the math appropriately. If you don't have a buddy that you're comfortable doing that with, and some people don't, the next best thing to do is to find a sweater that you bought at the store, or you knit previously, or belongs to your grandmother, or however you need to do that, but a garment that you feel good in, that fits you comfortably, that you think is flattering, and measure that sweater. And when you write those measurements down, those are your dream measurements. Those are your ideal measurements. You can then compare the knitting or crocheting or sewing pattern that you're looking at. You can compare the measurements of the pieces to your dream measurements, and then you can plan where you have to make adjustments before you start knitting. Once you know what you're going to do, knitting a garment is super easy. And once you have done a little bit of prep work at the beginning, you will come out at the end with a garment that suits you. And once you have done that, then of course you can just continue your exploration. Now I'm using a rough schematic because that's the one that I had on hand. A lot of times with the Yarn Inspirations patterns, the sizes will be color coded. If you have a pattern that is not color coded, I highly recommend that you go through and circle the numbers that are related to the size that you're going to do. If you're doing, you know, the large size, go through, figure out which one of these numbers is a large and put a big old ring around it. You can do the same thing in the written pattern. You know, if it says do this many things, and again, a lot of our patterns are color coded. If you know you're doing red, then just do red, but you can go and circle. The other reason I recommend circling things is, say we want to address changes, say we want to make changes in this pattern before we start knitting. In that case, even if it is color coded, maybe you don't want all the red numbers. Maybe you want the red numbers for the width, but you want the blue numbers for the height, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, take the time to go through and prepare your pattern. You know, you just print it off like I did here. You can scribble all over it if you have to, but that will help you figure out what you're doing. Now, if you have done the I'm measuring a sweater that's comfortable measurements, you're going to compare those measurements to the measurements in the pattern. If you have done your body measurements, you have to add what we call ease. So here's how I like to describe ease. Ease is the difference between your physical body measurement and the measurement of the item you are putting on your body. And there's two types of ease. There's positive ease and there's negative ease. So say you were knitting a sock. The cuff of that sock is going to be smaller. It's usually ribbed, right? So it stays up. The cuff of that sock is going to be smaller because you want it to stretch out and stay in the appropriate place on your leg. That would be negative ease. I'm making up numbers. Your calf might be 10 inches and that sock might be 9, but you want it to stretch to 10 so that it stays up. A cuff might have negative ease. If you're wearing a super body conscious sweater and you want to show off every curve that you have, you might do negative ease. You might have a 36-inch bust and maybe you'll knit that sweater to 35 because it wants you to hug, you want it to hug your curves. But most of us and most sweaters have what we call positive ease. So for most of the bigger measurements, I'm talking bust, waist, the area over your tummy, you want positive ease of between 2 and 4 inches. And that's so the garment sits comfortably on your frame. But if you stand up or sit down or reach over your head to get something down from the office shelf or something like that, that the sweater doesn't ride up or pull uncomfortably. So generally 2 to 4 inches on these big measurements. So for example, if I have a 40-inch bust, I'm going to knit a sweater that is anywhere between 42 and 44 for a traditional fit. Now, of course, that's not getting into oversized sweaters, et cetera, et cetera. If you like an oversized sweater, go ahead and knit it bigger. You know what I mean? The way that you're going to knit the sweater is going to depend on what your desired outcome is. So for this sweater in particular, there's a few things I wouldn't bother changing. I would not bother changing the neck opening. That's going to be pretty consistent across the sizes and pretty appropriate. And I'm not going to worry about that. One of the things I said earlier about this sweater being a super easy garment to knit if it's your first one is there's no shoulder seams and the sleeves are not separate. A lot of people have issues negotiating the crossback measurement, or sometimes it's called shoulder to shoulder. If this was, if this had a regular traditional sweater sleeve, this measurement can give a lot of new knitters a problem, but we don't have it because this is all one piece. So I'm not going to worry about that to speak of. I may take a tape measure of this full width of the whole piece and center it on that little bone at the base of my neck and see how long those sleeves are going to be. Maybe I want them longer. Maybe I want them shorter. And if I'm going to do that, then when I have my increase sections, because we're knitting from the bottom up, I know I'm going to have to get the calculator out and do some math here. Maybe I want this arm opening to be a little bigger. Maybe I have a broad shoulder or a large upper arm. And if I'm going to do that, maybe I'm going to start my increases down here instead of up here. That's another thing where I'm going to have to get the calculator out and do just a little bit of math. But generally speaking, this is a simple pattern because there's not a whole lot of shaping going on here. And none of it is super tight or super fitted. So again, this is why I think this is such a great sweater to get started with. Do we have any questions, Allie, about picking what size you want to knit?
Could you just clarify one more time, ease?
So ease is the difference between the body part that you're covering and the cover you're putting on it. So for example, if I measured my bust, my actual physical bust, and it was 40 inches, and I'm going to knit a sweater, again, I'm just making up, say I'm going to knit a sweater that's 44 inches because I don't want it too tightly fitted over my bust, then that is a 4-inch, that's 4 inches of positive ease. Okay, so the ease is the difference between your body part and, in this case, the garment. And again, we do that because if I had a 40-inch bust and I knit a 40-inch sweater, it might be tight. It might be tight when I'm sitting in a chair. It might be tight when I'm leaning. It might be tight, you know, if I'm reaching to do whatever. So is the ease already accounted for in the pattern? Of course it is. But the point that I'm trying to make is that you need to pick the right size to knit. The information that I'm giving you is to try and guide you towards picking the best size for you to knit. Because if you go to the store and buy a medium, medium may not be the best choice for you. It might be, but you have to check.
Wonderful. And then there's just one other question about petite sizing. Do you have a general rule for shortening length and sleeves?
I don't have a general rule. So the question again is about petite sizing. In this particular sweater, which we're talking about, what I would look at is this measurement here between the ribbing and where the underarm shaping starts. That is likely going to be need to be shorter. But again, that's a really quick fix. If the pattern says, you know, knit for 8 inches and you don't need 8 inches, well, knit for 7. You know what I mean? Sometimes you can do it by say you're knitting a medium and it's going to go petite. Say you're knitting a medium, maybe for the height, maybe you need the small. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying about going back and color coding. The other thing is personal preference. So in this case, because we're here, right, and we are increasing to make the sleeves, if I wanted a petite, I would stop increasing before it told me to. And again, without being able to look at every specific pattern without losing my mind, if it told me to make, say, 20 increases, maybe I only need to make 16. And that's what I was talking about, measuring that full width. So let's just, all right, I gotta think for a second here. So if we have 10 3/4 from here to here, we have that twice. So that's 21.5 plus 9. 21.5 plus 9 is 30.5. So if I was doing this small and I had 30.5 is what that finished measurement is going to be. So what I did is I took the neck opening and then I took the sleeve to the neck opening and multiplied that by 2 because I have that on either side. I'm going to take my tape measure and I'm going to put my thumb on 30.5 and I'm going to take the center part, which is 15.25, and I'm going to put 15.25 right on the back of my neck. And then I'm going to run that tape measure across my back and see how long those sleeves are going to be. And if I do 30.5 and that's too much for me, then I know, oh, I'm going to have to stop increasing a few rows before the pattern tells me. It's really hard to do individual pattern sizing on a video like this, but I hope that helps. And then one of the ways I would do that, you know, we always recommend that you get a gauge swatch. So if I'm getting 19 stitches to 4 inches, and that's the gauge for this pattern, for the sake of this video, I'm going to round it to 20 because I can't do math on 19 on the fly. So If I was doing 20 to 4, that means that I am getting 5 stitches per inch. So if I want to take 1 inch off that sleeve, I'm going to do 5 fewer increases. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I'll say this again at the end. If any of you guys have specific problems that you want to come to me with, please follow me on Instagram and message us at hooked, HOOKED, #4 life LLC, because that is monitored and I can help you size your own pattern. For the sake of this video, we're really talking generalities.
Fantastic.
Anything else?
I think we're all set right now.
All right, so the most important thing that I have done then is decided what size I'm going to knit, any alterations I need to make. So the other thing that's going to happen, we have this 12-row stitch repeat after the ribbing. I'm not going to do the ribbing on camera because I know you all know how to knit ribbing. So we're working on an odd number of stitches. So for the ribbing, our right side rows begin and end with a knit 1. Our wrong side rows begin and end with a purl 1. Oh, sorry, that's up here. So you're going to do as much ribbing as the pattern calls for, and then you're going to switch to the larger size and proceed in pattern as follows. So here's the thing. Everything in this sweater is knit 1, purl 1. It depends on where you put them, you know, to get this textured stitch. Let's take a closer look. So if you look down here, this is knit 1, purl 1 ribbing, right? Up here, this is my moss stitch pattern. I'm still working in knit 1, purl 1, but I'm staggering the placement. We're going to look at that a little more closely. But basically, all of this is knit 1, purl 1. It's where you put the knits and where you put the purls that makes life interesting. The other thing I want to remind you is as you're knitting along, you're going to change colors every 2 rows. So you're going to knit 2 rows in A, and then 2 rows in B, and then 2 rows in C, etc. Now, when I joined these yarns, when it was my turn to just add the color, I pulled up a fold, maybe 6 to 8 inches from the cut end, and I just knit the first stitch in the row or purled the first stitch in the row with that fold. I don't like to tie knots. Now, does this look a little loose and a little sloppy right there? Yes, it does. But when I weave my ends in, I'm just going to tighten that all up. Now that all 3 of my colors are working, I'm just going to bring the yarn up the side as I go because it's never going to travel more than 4 rows. So I'm going to, as I'm ready to grab the next color, I'm just going to bring it up the side. So there's my C color that I just finished. Now I need my A color, so I'm going to bring it up the side. Now, following along with the pattern, I know that I am on the 6th row because I made a little check mark. So I'm going to bring that yarn up the side. I don't want to pull it super tight because if I pull it super tight, that side is going to creep up on the side. And I don't want it super loose because all of those stitches are going to be sloppy, but I'm also not going to go crazy because honestly, that edge stitch is going to be caught up in the seam when I seam my front and back together. So if you're looking at the pattern, I'm on row 6. No, I'm not. I missed a check. I'm on row 7. So it says with A, work as for row 2. So I'm going to start this with a purl. All right, there we go. Too much going on, too many cameras. So again, I'm working on an odd number of stitches, and clearly I'm not doing the full width of a sweater. I'm just doing a little 15 stitch swatch just so you can see what I'm talking about. All right. And then when I go to do my next row, which is row 7, I know I'm going to do a row 1, which begins with a knit. Honestly, once you get the row started with the appropriate stitch, you don't have to think about it until you get to the other end. You're just knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, all the way across. You just have to make sure that you start with either a knit or a purl, that you start with the correct stitch. All right, now I'm going to go back here. Now I've knit 2 rows in my A color, so I know I need to go to my B color. So I'm going to just let my A color hang and bring my B color up the side. And once again, that's called a float. And don't worry about it because it's going to be covered. It's going to be covered when you put your seam on. All this edge will be covered because it will get caught up when you seam your front to your back. So again, these stitches might be a little loose on the side. Just make sure that you have enough tension. Oops. Yeah, that's a knit. There we go. Oh my goodness, my brain today. Purl. Knit. So that's a little bit too tight, but again, it's because I'm trying to knit on camera and talk at the same time. Now, could you cut the yarn every time you change it? You could, but oh my goodness, you would have so many ends to weave in. Allie, do we have some questions while I finish this little section? Because I do have a tip I want to teach, but I want to see if we're all on the same page first.
What cast on would you recommend for this pattern?
Honestly, I use longtail for everything. I know that there is a cast on that is more suitable for ribbing. I think it's Judy's tubular, but the only downside to using longtail for ribbing is you get, I mean, you can't even really see it. I used a longtail. You have to do it super loose or else it pulls. And there are stretchier cast-ons, but for me personally, I tend to be a very loose knitter just in generally, so it's not something that I worry about. But if you are concerned that you're going to have a problem with that, I would Google for a stretchy cast-on. And like I said, maybe Judy's Magic or a tubular cast-on. I know there's cast-ons that alternate knits and purls. It is not something that I personally have ever worried about in my knitting, but I am a loose knitter. Allie, anything else? I see type flying by.
So a couple of questions here about the coloring. So there's a question on if you could use a variegated yarn instead of multiple solids.
You absolutely could, but you would not get stripes. You would get a multi-pattern. It would still be lovely. I mean, you could use a solid in this pattern. I think that the stitch pattern is interesting. It gives you enough visual interest that you could do it in a solid if you wanted to. But again, the difference between a regular variegated and something like the Cakes yarns that have sequential solids, which is what Allie just said, is that the sequential solids give you stripes and multis, just regular multis do not. Variegated yarns, you won't get stripes, you'll get interesting pulling. I mean, it'll stripe a little if you change colors, right? So if you had like a cream based multi and a black based multi and a gray based multi, it will stripe a little. but you're not going to get the shading. The other thing that I think that is so interesting in this sweater, and we talked about it a little bit at the beginning, if you look here, it just so happened that the lightest section of all the colors pulled up and you got this really light section up on the back. If you look here, the darker section sort of paled up. So this idea that the yarn is going to shade, that is not going to happen with a regular multi. That's the sequential solids. I hope that helped. I know I'm talking a lot of tech today, you guys, but I want you all to have successful garments. Anything else, Allie, before we move on? We're doing fine for time.
Could you discuss how you introduced a new color?
Again, I did mention it a few minutes ago. All I do is pull the new color up. I pull up a fold, maybe 4 to 6 inches in from the cut end, and then I just knit with it. I leave the tails hanging. Here's my tails from when I introduced them. So again, for this little swatch, this is the C color that I did the ribbing with. There's where I introduced my A color. There's where I introduced my B color. Those stitches are a little bit loose, but when I weave them in, I'll tighten them up. And I'm only, if I'm gonna float, which I'm doing, I'm only gonna have these ends down here. I'm not gonna have a new end every time I change color. Unless, again, for whatever reason, you decide that you prefer that and you don't want to float your yarns. The only reason I don't recommend it is, again, oh my goodness, you will have so many ends to weave in, and most of us don't enjoy that. So that's why I'm changing my yarn up on the side. Anything else before I move on?
I think we're all set right now.
Okay, so let's go back and look at this pattern. So you can see when I started knitting my sample this morning to get ready for class, I took a pen or a pencil, and every time I completed a row, I made a check mark. And then it's going to tell you to repeat rows 1 through 12 over and over and over until the work measures 13 inches or 33 centimeters long, ending on a wrong side row. And also, again, 13 inches or 33 centimeters, depending on what size you're making. And if you made any alterations, to my petite friend out there who was asking questions. That is one way to do this. I'm going to teach you my cheats. I have 2 cheats for this so that I don't have to look at the pattern anymore. So this is cheating, but it will make the process a lot more enjoyable. You may have noticed that I have a stitch marker just hanging out here, living its best life. And that is to remind my brain that this is the right side of the work. The other 2 things you need to remember is you are changing colors every other row. So every time you use the color twice, you're going to change after that. You're going to need to remember that you're only changing with the right side facing you. See how there's no floats over here? That's because I only change color if the right side is facing me. Now, you know, sometimes when we knit ribbing, and in some patterns, not at Your Inspirations, where we very kindly write everything out for you, but some patterns you'll look at, it'll say, knit the knits and purl the purls. And usually what that means is if I see my V, which looks like the front side of stockinette or stocking stitch, I'm going to knit that because that's a knit stitch. And if I see a bump, I'm going to purl that because that's a purl stitch. That's calling for a purl stitch. So we're going to knit the knits and purl the purls. And that's how you make ribbing. The reason moss stitch works is on wrong side rows, you knit the knits and purl the purls. But on right side rows, you change that. You knit the purls and purl the knits. Let me say that one more time. It will make way more sense to you when you're knitting instead of watching. I know 2 things about a right side row. I know that I'm changing color, and I know that I am going to knit the purls and purl the knits. On my wrong side rows, I am not changing color, and I'm going to knit the knits and purl the purls. And the reason, again, you can certainly follow along with the pattern and do the check marks. But here's what happens to me when I'm doing a stitch pattern like this. I put it down because I'm done knitting for the day, or the phone rings, or the dog barks, or I go to get a snack and I come back and I go, ugh, I forgot to put a pencil mark down. I don't know where I am in this pattern. I don't know what I should be doing next. And I don't want to make a mistake. And then I put it in timeout and I don't finish. So using my tricks, you're going to say, this is a right side row. I know it's a right side row because it has a stitch marker hanging out there doing absolutely nothing except telling me it's a right side row. Well, if it's a right side row, I know I have to change colors. So I'm going to drop my color and I'm going to pick one. I'm going to pick the next one up in the sequence because the sequence is ABC, ABC, ABC. This is B, so I know that C is next. And then the last piece of information that I have, this is a right side row. And because it is a right side row, I have to stagger it. I have to knit the purls and purl the knit. So I'm going to look here and I'm going to, that's a knit stitch. So I'm going to start it with a purl. Give that a little room. Purl, knit. Now, what happens if you make a mistake and you keep knitting the knits and purling the purls? What's going to happen? You're going to get ribbing. When you see a section that looks ribbed, instead of like the moss stitch that we're doing, you know that you've made a mistake and you just rip back to the part where you can see what you're doing and you see a correct row. So you just rip back to there and start over again. But this is what we talk about when we talk about reading your knitting. It's going to tell you really quickly if you have made an error. If you have made an error, it's going to show you. You're going to look at it and it's going to be one of these things is not like the other. You know what I mean? You're going to see very quickly if you've gone wrong. So now I have a wrong side row. I know two things. I'm not going to change the color because there's no color waiting for me. And I'm going to knit the knits and purl the purls. So now, do I need this pattern in front of me when I put my work down and pick it up again? I do not. And I wouldn't do it like I would make sure I got the first 6 or 8 or 10 rows set before I decided to go rogue. You know what I mean? I would make sure I knew that I had the pattern established. But once I have the pattern established, I don't need the pattern for the work even sections. I only need the pattern again when I have to start doing increases. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Excellent.
We have a question here. Would you be able to knit this pattern in the round?
I'm thinking of the way I want to say this. Obviously, the answer is yes, of course you could. I can't knit and think at the same time. All right. You guys take a look at this and let me answer the question for the person that asked. Yes, however, the pattern is written to stagger row because you're turning the work, and in knitting in the round, you don't turn the work. So I would do two things. I would eliminate I would eliminate one stitch on each side. And I would do that because this stitch is meant to be in the seam. And if you are knitting in the round, you don't need that seam stitch. So I would take one stitch off each side when I was knitting. I don't think that you're going to have any kind of problems. Let me grab the chart, please. You're not going to have any problems going from here to here, right? You just knit the round, knit the round, knit the round, knit the round. That's fine. When you look at your, you'd have to be very careful with the increases. I think what I would do is place a marker here, place a marker here, and then do an increase on either side of the marker, because this is all increasing. That's how you get this to go. And the reason it curves is because you don't increase every row the same amount of time. You space the increases as you read the chart. So I think then, like I said, I think what I would do is mark where the seam would have been, make sure that I have my increases on either side. Once you get to here, you're going to have to break and go into rows because you need an opening for your arm to come out. So you could knit in the round from here to here. You would have to knit in rows going up to here and then do your shoulder seams. Because if you knit the round up here, there's no place for your arm to come out. There's no opening. Yeah, I hope that made sense.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any other questions before I move on to my last little section that I wanted to talk about?
I don't think so.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to put a row of stocking stitch on here. I'm just going to knit one row and purl one row. I want to talk just briefly about the increases. They're pretty common ones, but in these classes, I like to go over them in case they are unfamiliar, but they're also easier to see when I'm not working in a stitch pattern. So I'm just going to knit one row and purl one row, and then I'm going to talk about the different increases and decreases that we're using in the pattern. So Allie, if anybody else asks anything, you can interrupt me because I'm just going to knit these two rows, and otherwise we're just going to go over increases and decreases in a minute.
There is a question here about making a larger neck opening.
So since you're knitting from the bottom up, there's two things that you could do. Here is the easiest one. If I wanted that to be a stretcher opening, I don't like to increase the width a whole lot. And the reason is I don't want it to slide and fall off my shoulder. Me personally, what I would do is so this is the front neck opening. Here, let's get the sweater out. It'll be easier. Here's the front neck opening, right? Which curves down and gives you lots of space. Here's the back neck opening, which goes straight across the back. What I would do, instead of trying to increase the width, what I would do is work the front neck opening twice. Because if I bring this down here to match the front, that's going to give me a very significantly larger amount of space, but it's not going to make it so wide that I would be concerned that the neck would slide over to my shoulder and be uncomfortable. That's what I would do. I would add the front shaping to the back piece. All right, I'm gonna just do my purl row real quick, and then we're gonna talk increases and decreases. You guys are getting serious about your sweater design questions. I love it. That is exactly what I hoped to achieve in this video, instead of just, teaching a stitch pattern. I love that you guys are asking questions about how to customize garments, because once you get the hang of it, you will never stop. Nothing will ever be as much fun as having a beautifully fitted garment. And when somebody asks you where you got it, you can look them in the eye and say, I made it myself. And it's one of a kind. It's just so satisfying. And of course, we all feel better when we look better, and being able to you can't walk into Macy's and ask them to customize a sweater. You can when you're doing it yourself. So the first, let's do a couple of the knit side tricks. One is KFB, which is knit front and back. So to do that, I'm going to knit in the front of the stitch like I normally would, but I'm not going to push it off the left-hand needle. I'm not going to finish the stitch. So there's the stitch that I knit normally. And then I'm going to go in the back loop. So my needle goes through the center. And I'm going to knit in the back of that same stitch. So I've turned one stitch into two stitches. And now I'm going to push it off the left-hand needle. All right, let's take a look at that one more time. Knit front and back, knit in the front of the stitch. Do not finish the stitch. Do not pull it, push it off the left-hand needle. So now you have one, then you're going to knit through the back loop by taking your needle tip and putting it in the center. You're going to knit through the back loop and then push it off the left-hand needle. And now you have changed one stitch into two. The other thing we might have going on here is the Ssk Decrease, which is slip, slip, knit. And how it works is like this. You slip two stitches knitwise individually, place them back on the left-hand needle and knit two together through the back loop. It is a left leaning decrease as opposed to a knit two together in which you simply knit two stitches as one. That is a right leaning decrease. So the Ssk is a left leaning decrease. So I'm going to slip the first stitch knitwise. I'm going to slip the second stitch knitwise. I'm going to put those two stitches back on the left-hand needle. And then I'm going to knit the two of them together through the back loop. So you can see, let's see if I can get it on camera here. You can see that my decrease leans to the left. Now, once you're comfortable with that technique, another little Mary Beth technique, little tip and trick here, slip one, slip the next one, put them back on the left-hand needle, leave your right-hand needle in, it's already where it needs to be. Instead of putting them back on the left-hand needle, pulling out the right-hand needle and then reinserting it to knit together through the back loops. If you do that little twisty thing that I just did, the needle's where it needs to be, you can yarn over and pull through both stitches and you get your left leaning decrease. All right, now let's look at the purl side increases and decreases. We have the purl two together, which again is super easy. You're just purling two stitches together as one, which I'm not going to do on camera because I know that you all know how to do that. All you'd have to do is insert your needle into two stitches, yarn over, pull it through both, pop them both off. We do have the occasionally tricky knit two together or purl two together through back loop. So instead of going here, like I would for a purl two together, I'm going to angle my stitches just a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to purl two together through the back loop. So you can see I brought my right hand needle tip through the back loop of those two purl stitches. I'm going to purl the two together and then pop them off the left hand needle. Let's try that one more time. So these are the two stitches I want to work in. So instead of going here, like I would for a purl two together, I'm going to purl two together through the back loop. So you can see that just out of habit, I'm pushing the stitches as close to the tip as they can get without them popping off. And the reason I'm doing that is I need some extra space to work in. If I try and do it back here, I'm going to have a heck of a time trying to get that needle tip in that twisted stitch. So I like to put it a little closer to the tip. It gives me more room to work. I'm bringing that needle tip up through the center, yarn over, finish the stitch and pop them both off. So those are my purl two togethers through back loop. What else do we have that's interesting in this pattern? Purl into front and back. Let me just put a couple plain stitches on here so I don't have a big knotted mess. So much like knit front and back, I'm going to purl into the front leg of the stitch like I normally would. I am not going to push it off the left-hand needle. I'm going to leave that up there. And then I'm going to purl, see how I'm bringing my needle around? I'm going to purl in the back leg of the same stitch and then pop it off the left-hand needle. I have turned the one purl stitch into two. take a look at that one more time. So I'm going to purl in the front leg of the stitch, not push it off the left-hand needle, and then purl in the back leg of the same stitch. And then pop it off. And that's my purl stitch increases. See, I don't think there's anything else on here that is tricky. So I think we've done pretty well. Let's see how we're doing for time. Oh, we're doing great. We have 13 minutes left. So hit me with your questions. Now's the time.
Doris has a question here. If you use this 12-row pattern with 3 colors of yarn for a scarf, what would you do with the floats?
I have to think. Well, I'll tell you what I do, but it's basically redesigning the whole thing. What I have done patterns like that, and what I have done in that instance is I have placed a border of one color. I've placed like 3 garter stitches on either side. So say I was going to, again, let's not look at the ugly part. If I was going to make this a scarf, obviously I wouldn't have the ribbing either. What I would do is I would start, say with my C color, because that's what here, I do some garter stitch rows. I would maintain 3 stitches in garter stitch on either side of the stitch pattern, and I would maintain those in one color. So I'd have a ball of, again, just say C. I'd have a ball of C over here, and I'd have another ball of C over here. And then what would happen is the floats would not be on the edge of the work. They'd be 3 stitches in. So they'd still be happening, but they wouldn't be right on the edge. They wouldn't quite be so sloppy. You could also do some twisting, you know, twist the yarn every 2 rows to make sure that the floats are twisted amongst each other. But I would do that. I would set a garter stitch border on either side, or a cable or something, just to make sure that those floats, when they happened, were not right on the edge of the fabric, because that would be ugly. What else, Sally?
What does PM mean in the line? PM at the each of last row in the shape sleeve section.
I will look while I'm looking. PM usually means place marker. Sorry guys, I have to look for the right spot in the pattern. And my pages are every which way. Cast on at each end. Yeah, PM place marker. And the reason they're telling you to place the marker there is because it says, after that, it says continue even in pattern until work from marked row measures however much it's supposed to measure. So it's having you put the marker there just so you have a point from which to measure.
Great. And there's another question here about shaping the sleeves. Could you discuss the cast on at the shape sleeves?
Oh, that's a really super good question. Let me just think what I want to say there for 1 second so I don't say the wrong thing. Cast on beginning, 4 stitches at the beginning of the next 14 rows. Okay, that's a super good question, and I am glad you asked it. Again, don't panic. I'm in stocking here on the stocking it here actually. So what I would do is use a knitted on cast on. I would knit. So here's my cast on, my 4 stitches. So I'm going to do a knitted on cast on 1, 2. I think we have video on this if you're not familiar with it. Essentially what you're doing is acting like you're going to knit a stitch. You're going to insert your needle in the stitch, yarn over, draw through a loop, but instead of pushing it off the left-hand needle, you're taking the loop that is on your right-hand needle and you're adding it with a twist. See how I brought my needle around this way? So now there's my 4 extra stitches. I'm going to work my row. And again, I'm just doing stocking or stockinette stitch here for the sake of speed. You will maintain those stitches in the moss stitch pattern that you've been working in. Oh, this is an ugly mess with all those increases and decreases. So that was the 4 stitches at the beginning of the right side row. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the wrong side row. I think the knitted on, you could also use the cable cast on. I don't use cursive E or backwards loop unless I have to, because I think it gets sloppy. And even though this is a wrong side row for me, because I've been working in stocking, because you're doing knit 1 purl 1 rows, it doesn't matter if you're knitting your cast on the wrong side row instead of purling it on. I wouldn't lose my mind about it one way or the other. And of course, it will also be covered. Your edge stitches will be covered up in the seam. So there's no reason to get crazy about it. Let's do one more. So that's what's giving you that curve on the sleeve. That was a really great question. Thank you. All right, we got 8 minutes left. Hit me up, guys. It's not so often you can get private lessons.
There's a question here that's about shape right neck. Could you explain that section of the pattern?
If I can find it. Shape right neck. Pattern across specific number of stitches. So pattern across means you're going to keep in your moss stitch pattern. This is a right side row, so you're knitting the purls and purling the knit. So you're going to work however many stitches they tell you. Then you're going to knit 2 together. And then it says turn, leaving remaining stitches on a spare needle. What I like to use, let's see if I have one here. You guys are trying to trick me today, I'm telling you. I like to use a stitch holder instead of a spare needle because I think the stitch holders keep them on better. And I thought I had one sitting here, but I evidently do not. Here's one. This is a little one. I would obviously use a bigger one, but I like these because you undo them like that, slide your stitches onto the needle, close it up, and then they can hang out there. And then if you put it in the appropriate direction, you can knit right off the points when it's time to knit those stitches. So I like these stitch holders. They come, you can get them at Michael's in a 3-pack. So this is a little one, there's a medium one, and there's a big one. And for this situation, I would probably use the big one. I just don't know where I put mine at the moment. So then when you continue on in the pattern, turn, leave remaining stitches on the spare needle. You could also use a spare circular if you have one. My issue with those is they tend to pull out. If you don't want to do that and you don't have a large stitch holder, you can also thread a piece of scrap yarn through a tapestry needle, put that scrap yarn through the remaining stitches and tie it off. And then again, when it's time later, it's like using a lifeline. You can put those stitches back up on the needle later. But when it says turn, it's telling you continue on the remaining however many stitches you have. So these rows that are talking about the right neck, you're only working on that section that you just knit on. So you're going to continue shaping the right neck, and then you're going to put a little shaping in the shoulder so it's not just a big straight lump going across. And then you're done with that. Then you're going to go with right side facing, slip next 37 or however many stitches from spare needle onto a stitch holder. Join appropriate color to remaining stitches and proceed as follows. So what's going to happen? Let me grab the sweater. I think it'll be easier to see. So I'm getting to the point where I'm going to shape the neck. So I have this big giant row. It's the full width. It's going from one end of the sleeve to the other end of the sleeve. So I'm going to knit however many stitches it told me to knit, right? And I'm going to put the remaining stitches on a stitch holder or a spare needle or a piece of waste yarn or whatever works for me. Then I'm going to work on these stitches and then do a little bit of shoulder shaping, and then I'm finished with this side. So then the next thing it says is slip XYZ number of stitches onto that stitch holder. That's these guys. And I'm going to work in them later. When I put the ribbing on, those stitches are waiting for me. So I'm going to put those stitches on a stitch holder or a piece of waste yarn or a spare needle. And then I'm going to do my left front shaping on these stitches. And then my little bit of shoulder shaping, and then I'm going to finish that all out. So these guys are hanging out on a stitch holder so that when my back is done, I can pick those stitches. I can knit right off those stitches. I don't have to pick anything up. I can knit right off them when I'm putting my ribbing on. Hope that helps. Do we have anything else? We're running out of time.
There are a number of questions, and I just don't think that we will get to them.
All right. Well, Alec, you just hit me with questions, and when we have to stop talking, tell me.
So when you're adding the stitches for the sleeves, you continue adding stitches until you reach your correct number of stitches for your size. Okay.
Yes.
Great.
It'll tell you. It'll say add 4 stitches at the beginning. I gotta find the right page. Yeah. I should have marked these page numbers. Sometimes you guys, I get the patterns before they're finished so that I can prepare for class, but they don't have little niceties on there like like page numbers. Okay, we did that. Here we go, shape sleeves. Continue to 4 stitches beginning next 14 rows. Place mark at the end of the last row. Continue even in pattern, which means keep working with no increases or no decreases. That's all work even means. There's no increases, there's no decreases, and you're maintaining the pattern until you get your height, and then you're going to shape your shoulders. This was the back. And then for the front, you're going to work up to a certain point and then do that front neck shaping. Anything else, Allie?
There are a couple of questions here about seaming.
I would just use a mattress stitch. I use a mattress stitch for everything. For a mattress stitch, you have the 2 pieces together, you have your tapestry needle, and you go under a couple stitches on this side, couple stitches on this side, pull it up, couple on this side, couple on this side, pull it up. It gives you an almost invisible seam. You can see what a nice job they did the seaming here. I didn't seam this, but somebody did a beautiful job. And then it takes those edge stitches and those floats and it rolls them to the inside where nobody can see them.
Fantastic. Well, I have left Mary Beth's Instagram handle in the chat just above. So if you do have more questions that we didn't get to today, that's a great place to reach out to her. And we definitely just wanted to thank you so much for joining us today. And we hope to see you back again soon at a Michael's Community Classroom.
Thank you so much for coming. We'll see you again.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.